Hey guys, welcome back. We're back here on the parkour server, Zero Miner, and today I'm continuing the Greek mythology series because I like it, even if none of my videos get viewed. Anyway, today we're going to be doing the story of Theseus. Now, I know you've probably heard of it because some other YouTubers whose names shall remain unsaid have used it, but this is the pure full version, or at least the one that's in my Greek mythology book. Let's go. Also, before we get into it, according to YouTube statistics in my eyes, I have like 4 subscribers. So if you want to hit that button and get that number up by 1, I'd appreciate it a lot. Let's go. Alright, so Theseus was the great Athenian hero. You might have heard of, people like Hercules, but Theseus is specific to Athens, Greece. And this is because he was a hero who favored logic and reason, whereas Hercules was a fighter, someone who made decisions with his heart rather than his head, and Athens preferred someone like Theseus. So the story of Theseus goes, he's the son of the Athenian king. I mean, makes sense. So when he was born, his father took him and his mother away and set them up in like a little house, and then left to go be king. And he told Theseus's mother that he had placed underneath a stone in a little hollow a few miles away a sword and a pair of shoes. And he told his wife that once their son grew up and strong enough and big enough to roll the stone away to uncover the sword and the shoes, he would be able to come to Athens to claim his birthright. So, Theseus grew up. Apparently, he didn't really have anything crazy happen to him in his first, I don't know what it is, probably like 15 years or so. So, at this point in the story, Theseus is, I'm not entirely sure how old, but old enough, and he's grown up real nice. He's become, strong, pretty much everything that the Greeks thought a guy should be. And so when his mother finally took him to the little hollow, he, rolled the stone away without any trouble and set out for Athens. His mother and grandfather tried to tell him to take a ship. This was probably the safest option because the road was plagued by bandits and weirdos and people who generally, if you're going to be the king of somewhere, you don't really want to meet. But Theseus was stubborn, and he thought that you couldn't be a great hero if you took the easy way out. So he wanted to go around by the road, which he did because, like I said, stubbornness. So he began the long and hazardous journey, and, he made it. He didn't die or anything, and he killed all the bandits he encountered and made the road safe for travelers from then on. So, good for him. Alright, so something you should probably know before we keep going is Theseus's idea of justice was quite simple. It was do to other people what they did to their victims or whoever. So, for example, Siren, who had made those that he captured kneel to wash his feet and then kick him into the sea, charmer, I'm sure you can tell, Theseus tossed him off a cliff. So, that happened. Sinis, who killed people by fastening them to 2 pine trees that are bent down to the ground and then letting the pine trees go and hurling them into the stratosphere, he died that way, as I'm sure you could guess. The Greeks had some very interesting ways to kill people. Oh boy. Procrustes, he was a guy who placed his victims on an iron bed and then either stretched them out or cut parts of them off until they reached the length that he thought they should be. So, naturally, he died that way. I never said it was going to be a happy story. It will get better, maybe. That's really annoying. So, with that out of the way, when Theseus finally arrived in Athens, he was, pretty well liked, having cleared the road of all bandits and made it safe for people to use again. That generally does tend to make one popular. So the king of Athens, who obviously was Theseus' father, but he didn't know it yet. He didn't know who Theseus was, and he kind of saw him as like a threat. Like someone who might try and steal his kingship, I guess. I don't know. So he came up with the idea of poisoning him. So, yeah. This idea was actually Medeia's, who was the wife of Jason, who did not have a good end, but her story's for another time. All you need to know is that she was not a very nice person. So she came up with the idea and told the king. By the way, the king's name was Aegeus, or Aegeus. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce a lot of this stuff. Told him that he should poison the newcomer so that he didn't, win over the people and take the throne. Yeah, so the king poisoned a cup and got ready, but yeah, there's a but. Don't worry, the story doesn't end that soon. So as Theseus walked into the banquet hall, he drew his sword, which, if you remember from earlier, is the sword that he had placed under the rock for his son. Or sorry, that the king had placed under the rock for his son. So the king recognized it and was like, "Yo, that's my son. I don't think I want to poison him." So he slammed the cup to the ground, and Medea somehow managed to escape, and it's not really told what happened to her after that. But Theseus and his father were real happy. And now we get to the part that you might or might not have heard before. It's probably the most famous part of Theseus' journey. So, several years before, a very unfortunate fate had fallen on Athens. Minos, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce a lot of these, had lost his only son while his son was on a visit to Athens, because the king of Athens had done something kind of not okay and asked Minos' son to go on a dangerous quest for him to kill this bull, I think. And he failed, and Minos' son died. So that is kind of considered, poor etiquette when your guest dies. So Minos did the only rational thing and captured Athens and declared that he would raze it to the ground unless Athens gave him a tribute of 7 boys and 7 girls every year to be devoured by the Minotaur. The Minotaur is a half bull, half human. The story of how the Minotaur came to be is interesting. So basically, Poseidon, the sea god, gave this great bull to Minos, the king of, that town, and said, sacrifice this bull to me, prove your loyalty, and then we're cool. But Minos was like, no, I don't want to do that. Because it was a really beautiful bull, I guess. So, to punish Minos, Poseidon made his wife fall in love with the bull. I never said the story made sense. So, thus the Minotaur was born. I don't even want to know in the slightest how any of that happened. Apparently it did. So the Minotaur is a thing that exists. And surprisingly enough, Minos didn't have the Minotaur killed once he was born, which honestly probably would have been a better idea. Instead, he had Daedalus, a great architect and inventor, build a labyrinth, which you've probably heard. This is where the story of Icarus ends up. But that's neither here nor there. Unless you guys want it, then please do ask me and I will give it to you. No, so Daedalus built this labyrinth for the Minotaur. This crazy, twisting, you know what a maze is. But maze tier 2. And this labyrinth is where the young Athenians that were sacrificed to Minos went every year. 7 girls, 7 boys. shoved into the labyrinth to meet their inevitable demise, because if you ran around, he could be waiting behind any corner, and if you stood still, there was a massive, unconquerable chance that the Minotaur would be there. And if you managed to avoid the Minotaur, it wasn't like they were giving you bed and breakfast. So, you'd starve or something like that. Basically, yeah, you would die, and not in a very pleasant way. So, Theseus has now been claimed as the heir to the Athenian throne. Cool. And it's sacrifice time. So, it's sacrifice time in Athens, yeah? So, the mood's not real high. But Theseus offers to be one of the kids sacrificed, which, honestly, I don't entirely understand, because wouldn't, you want the heir to the throne to be safe? But apparently the Athenian people saw it as, like, a display of heroics and bravery, so, good for Theseus. So, but no one knows, except his father, Theseus is intending to kill the Minotaur. Cool, good for him. So he tells his father that when he comes back, if he has successfully defeated the Minotaur, he'll fly a white flag from his ship. Otherwise, he'll have his crew fly a black flag if he's dead. So he'll know pretty fast. And so off they go. So Theseus is there in Crete. And when the Athenian victims, I guess, are paraded past everyone, the king, Minos, his daughter, Ariadne, I'm going to call her Ariadne, she, at first sight, I guess, falls in love with Theseus and decides that she doesn't really want him to die. So she goes to Daedalus, the architect of the labyrinth, and says and tells him to show her a way out, show her a strategy for getting out alive. And then she sends for Theseus and says, I want you to get out of this alive. And he's like, that sounds pretty good to me. So, Daedalus gives Theseus a ball of cloth, like a thing of twine, and tells him to use it. As I'm sure you can imagine. He says, he basically says, what you need to do is set it at the entrance and then roll it out as you go, and you'll be able to find your way back. And Theseus goes, sounds pretty good. That's what I'm going to do. So he does. Theseus goes into the labyrinth, sets the ball of thread at the entrance, and rolling it out behind him, goes in search of the Minotaur. Finds the Minotaur sleeping, and apparently doesn't have a weapon, so strangles the Minotaur to death with his bare hands. Good for him? Good, yeah. Good for Theseus, I guess. And then, easily finds his way back by just following the thread. So, cool. Labyrinth and Minotaur successfully defeated. So everyone else follows him, and they take Ariadne with them, the daughter of Minos, who loves Theseus, and they take her, and they leave. They leave very quickly. Now, on the way back, they put in at some island, and what happens at this island is reported differently. One story says that Theseus just left Ariadne. Like, straight up, he just left without her while she was sleeping. The other story paints Theseus in a better light. She was, like, seasick, I guess, and was, like, on the shore to recover, and then, like, this giant storm struck and blew the ship, like, out of the harbor, I guess, that they were at, or wherever they were. And Theseus kept trying to get back, but he couldn't, and by the time they got back, she'd, like, starved to death or something. So, not known how, but Ariadne dies, so they don't have her when they get back. Now, when Theseus is sailing home, either at his excitement of killing the Minotaur or his grief over Ariadne, depending on which story you believe, he forgets to put up the white flags. So Theseus' father, who's been waiting for weeks or however long it's been, for some sign, he's been waiting at the harbor on a cliff, and he sees black sails. So what that means to him is Theseus is dead and there's no hope left. So he throws himself off of a cliff, as you do. So Theseus gets back home and is king, because, of course, it does make you wonder. If Theseus had really died, and then the king had killed himself over in his grief, who would become king? I don't know if the king had any other sons, but that seems like a bit of an oversight. So Theseus is king of Athens, and he's actually, supposed to be a really good king. He doesn't really want to rule over people, so he sets up the world's first democracy, where the people of Athens have a say in what gets done, and everything's pretty cool. People really like him. He's the figurehead that they need in, real, actual stuff, times happening. And then otherwise the people just kind of get to make their own decisions. Now, I can't go over everything that happened to Theseus in his life, because otherwise this video would end up being 45 minutes long. But he had a lot of adventures. He was really nice to a lot of people because he was a really good king. And a lot of stuff happened. He got rescued from the underworld when he got stuck down there with his friend for attempting to kidnap Persephone, Hades' wife. Not the best idea. But Hercules rescued him, so that turned out okay. And he had, he did a lot of other things. Now, this is where it gets slightly weird, but so basically Theseus and his wife Phaedra had a son, Hippolytus, who hated women. So, that's a thing. He really didn't like him. But Phaedra, Hippolytus's mother, fell in love with him. Wait, hold on, I'm wrong. I just checked the book. It was her stepson, which is still weird, but slightly less. It's still weird, but slightly less creepy. So basically, Phaedra loved her stepson Hippolytus and couldn't do anything about it because he hated women. So she planned to kill herself. And after a little while of just weird stuff happening, she ended up doing it. But she wrote a note telling Theseus that Hippolytus had done some shit to Phaedra. Not gonna elaborate. You fill in the details on your own. So Theseus was real angry because he thought that Phaedra had told the truth. And he banished Hippolytus. He banished his son. And then, a little while after that, Hippolytus ended up, dying. He got, his chariot got, shattered when his horses, ran away. So, he was dying, and Artemis came to Theseus, the goddess Artemis, and said, "Hey, your son was telling the truth, and your wife lied." And so, Hippolytus, with, 2 minutes left to live, came back to see Theseus, and Theseus was like, "Man, I'm real sorry about that." He was like, "It's fine." And so Theseus felt real guilty, but Hippolytus died. There was nothing he could do. And that's pretty much where that story ends, and where Theseus' story begins to come to a close. Theseus died years later in exile from Athens. It's never quite entirely told why they exiled him, but apparently he did something that Athenians didn't like, and they banished their king. After he'd done, everything for them. But so he died in the court of his friend, King Lycomedes. And it's not real fun, but the king, his friend and host, ended up killing him somehow. And so, eventually, after his death, his body was brought back to Athens, and they gave him a real nice funeral, despite having banished him. And that is where the story of Theseus comes to a close. I really hope you enjoyed this. I'm sorry if the video's a little long, but it's a good story. Let me know what you'd see in the future. please watch this video. Check out another video. I'm slowly getting into it. I'm figuring out how this whole thing works. Subscribe and help boost my subscriber count by a person. I will love you forever. You guys are the best. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.